Thank you very much. And thank you very much to all of you that you have decided to stay to this very last session today and listen to some of the words that I have to share with you today. So just to start, a question to all of you. I'd like you to raise your hand if you feel that you have, or you are in a way, in a position to shape the future of the Western Balkans, or the value proposition of the Western Balkans to the global community. Please raise your hand if you feel that it's up to you to change that. Okay, not everyone, I think maybe 50-50. All right, so I would like you to look at this map. So if you look at this map, you will see, probably not all of the countries, but you will know that there are roughly 200 countries, give or take, around the world that are looking for investors, are trying to invite investors to their countries to put their money into that country. And that happens from Fiji to Uzbekistan, from Moldova to Croatia. And I see it practically every single week, or I should actually say every single day, because technically, in London, you have an event promoting a specific geography taking place every single day. And if you look at the agenda, you will probably be able to guess what the topics will be. And I can tell you, there's always three things. The first one is strategic location, which I absolutely love. Sometimes it's replaced by unique location, because we can take one country and plant it to a different location. I mean, strategic location is something that every single country advertises, and you can see that we have probably 200 strategic locations around the world. The second one is educated talent. And of course the talent is educated because you have universities in all the countries. So if people graduate from these universities, they're clearly educated. And the last one is incentives. And there are always incentives that make a lot of sense for every single company around the world. So last week, I was invited to an event in London about Jordan. And I love Jordan. I've been to Jordan quite a few times, and Petra is amazing. If you haven't been, definitely do go there. And last time I was in Jordan was in May, part of a World Bank delegation looking at what the country has to offer. And I got the invitation, and I got a couple of points in that invitation, and I decided not to go because I knew exactly what would be talked about during that event. The only plus was that the Crown Prince was supposed to join that delegation, the Jordanian Crown Prince. I don't know if that's enough to make investors come, but that was the incentive. Now, sorry, I pressed the wrong button. Sorry. Oh, thank you very much. I was supposed to press the upper one. What we were talking about, the three items that I mentioned a moment ago, this is, unfortunately, the old playbook. This is a playbook that was relevant probably in the 90s, maybe if you really stretch it, the beginning of the 2000s. But if you look at what has been happening over the last 20 years or 2 decades, you will see things like the digital revolution really decoupling business from geography. You will see cloud computing. You will see the COVID pandemic, which made a lot of us work actually from home, and has made geography completely irrelevant. If you look at the broader picture, there is an interesting study by Accenture, which looks at the amount of disruption that is happening around the world. So just between 2020 and 2023, the level of disruptions that businesses have been facing increased by almost 200%. 200%. So if you look at an annual increase, we're really talking about roughly 35% per year. And if you look at how many people, how many executives are actually prepared to deal with the disruption, last year, Accenture was saying that it was 46%. This year, the study was released in September, it's 42%. So the situation is getting more and more complicated, and we can see that those who are trying to attract that investment do not necessarily take that into account. So I need to look at the buttons here. So when we are talking about geography, the question isn't where a business is. The question is what kind of ecosystem it belongs to. Not where, but what kind of ecosystem it belongs to. So I want to invite you to look at a few shifts that I see happening, and we've been running research on how investment promotion agencies promote and communicate their value proposition since 2018, looking at all the countries in Central and Eastern Europe and in the Western Balkans. So when we talk about strategic location, we should actually be talking about a strategic mindset. When we're talking about educated workforce, I mean, if you remember what was talked about yesterday when we discussed talent, one thing I heard at the beginning was the Western Balkans has educated workforce. And then 5 minutes later, what I heard was that there was a skill mismatch. So what is it then? Is it an educated workforce, or is there a skill mismatch? So we're really talking about future-ready workforce. So when we're saying, okay, this is our workforce, is this workforce future-ready? So will the companies that we are trying to attract to our countries, will they find the talent that will allow them to operate from that country? We're talking about incentives, excuse me. What really matters is trust and predictability. So don't advertise the incentives. Advertise the trust. Cost efficiency, the new mindset, the new narrative is capability advantage. And finally, we talk about industrial parks. Maybe we should talk about innovation ecosystems here. So to sum up this part, the investors of today are not really buying geography. What they are buying is readiness and relevance. Is that location going to be relevant in the next few years? In my work, I work with locations on a regular basis, for example, by running so-called reinvention sprints. And I can tell you, and this is what our client told us, that running a single half-a-day reinvention sprint unlocked between 3 and 5 million pounds of investment. And I'm talking about a client from one of the 5 biggest cities in Poland. So what the real problem is that most countries have the capabilities, are able to, have the opportunities to attract investors. The problem is that they oftentimes ask the wrong questions. So today I would like to invite you to go through a few questions with me and try to think forward about how you would answer these questions if that promotion, that discussion about the value proposition was really up to you. So the first question that I would like to ask you is, what would it take for your location to stop being a hidden or a best kept secret or a hidden gem, because these are the expressions that investment promotion agencies oftentimes use when they talk about their locations. The investors haven't yet discovered us, but we have everything that is needed. They just haven't seen it. So what would it take for your location to actually go viral? Have you ever thought about that? Because for many countries, it is actually, a badge of honor to be saying that their location is this hidden gem. But invisibility is not really a strategy. What you need is clarity, not mystery. So if you think about Estonia never said that they are this small country in the Baltics. They went out and they started saying that they are the world's most digital nation. They were really courageous about that. And just a few months ago, I had the privilege of speaking with the former president of Estonia, Toomas Ilves, who is recognized as the architect of Estonia's digital nation. If you feel like listening to this conversation, you can find that conversation on Apple Podcasts. There is an Inside Reinvention podcast, and you will hear how he approached this issue. That he was not afraid, and he wasn't the president at the time, he was just a minister of foreign affairs when this was happening. He was later elected the president of Estonia. So what I'm trying to say is that instead of hiding behind this secrecy in a way, go bold. Identify what you can be known for and claim it, basically. And, yesterday we were talking about storytelling. We were talking about how to present the Western Balkans, and we identified quite a few very interesting solutions. For example, which this is something that I was really impressed by, understanding that the capabilities are not the same everywhere, but you actually can complement each other. I'm talking about specific markets. So I see the Western Balkans as an adaptability lab. I'll explain a bit later what I mean by that, but you've gone through quite a few things in the history. I mean, we are in Sarajevo, so I think that you should claim that and say that this is your biggest strength, really. Now, the second question that I want to ask you is, can your talent, your infrastructure, and regulation adapt fast enough for industries that don't yet exist? We were talking about AI today. We don't know how this will unfold. So instead of looking at how we can support investors at the moment, we should be actually looking at what can we do now that those investors of the future will see us as a place that is actually future relevant and future ready. And again, if you look at some case studies around the world, the Baltics created their startup ecosystem from scratch. Look at where Estonia is with their unicorns. It didn't exist 30 years ago. If you look at the aerospace industry in the UAE, they started developing that before they even had airspace engineers. And again, I was talking about adaptability. See how you can prepare the talent right now, not for today's investors, but for tomorrow's investors. What conversations about your location's weaknesses are you avoiding right now, and what would happen if you brought it into the open air? Because this question, why is this question important? Because there isn't a perfect place around the world. Not a single geography is perfect. There's always issues. It might be corruption. It might be, we were talking about this talent mismatch. It might be related to bureaucracy. There's always an issue. But if you are able to clearly identify the weaknesses and say, these are the weaknesses, but we are working on them right now, and I assure you that investors will be more than happy to go on that path with you because they will understand that you're doing something about it. You're not trying to hide it under the carpet. You're actually doing something about it. And I'll give you a story. In 2020, when the COVID pandemic hit, I was in touch with quite a few different investment promotion agencies. And I remember Invest Lithuania. They were the only ones who were visible in the first day of the pandemic. Everybody else disappeared. And what did Invest Lithuania do? They simply said to the investors in Lithuania, look, we have absolutely no idea what is going to happen. And we believe that you have absolutely no idea what is going to happen. But maybe if we sit together, maybe we can figure out something. And maybe we can make our lives easier. So I would encourage you to do exactly that. And when you look at the Western Balkans, and when I look at the situation in Ukraine at the moment, and I've been involved in quite a few projects in Ukraine, I can see how they are changing the narrative from a country that is overwhelmed by a war into developing the sectors, into specifically tech, into investing in education. They just recently opened a platform, a free platform, this is owned by the government, that upskills individuals. It's part of the larger project that the government has been developing. And I see the narrative here in the Western Balkans as talking about, or maybe leaving the topic of being post-conflict to perhaps talking about post-fear. The next question. What 3 disruptions could reshape your investment appeal, and how are you preparing for that? I said at the beginning that there's quite a few different disruptions. And throughout the last 2 days, we've been talking about geopolitical challenges, we've been talking about trade wars, we've been talking about economic supply chains related issues. And I'll give you a story from last year. I happened to go to South Korea on an annual basis to host an international conference, and I've been doing that for the last 4 years. And last year, or 2 years ago, Korea celebrated the 75th anniversary of the, as they call it, the special brotherhood of blood between the US and South Korea. This is post-Korean War. They were absolutely, last year when I went there, they were absolutely annoyed, let's be very diplomatic here, by the trade tariffs that were introduced by the Trump administration. They had not expected that. And the reason why I'm saying this is that the number of these disruptions will only accumulate. There will always be something. And if you manage to come through one of those successfully, tomorrow there will be something else. So it's worth thinking about the disruptions of the future. If you look at Singapore, for example, Singapore has a specific ministry that is focused on foresight. So they are looking at what can potentially happen and how they can be affected by that. So we were talking about some of the features or some of the advantages of the Western Balkan countries. And again, resilience is something that you have here quite well installed. Why not make that your key differentiator? Plus the adaptability that I was talking about earlier. You might want to just show to the world that you don't just offer a strategic location, but you adapt to different disruptions faster than anybody else. This is a clear differentiator. Let me ask you the last question. If your country were a startup, what would your Series A pitch sound like? And would you get the funding? Reinvention really demands honesty about things like your value proposition. And if you are unable to clearly define a differentiator, if you're repeating the same old story from that old playbook, this will not get you noticed. I'll give you one example from a recent reinvention sprint that I did with a location, again in Poland. I asked them one question: what do you believe makes you completely different from the other cities that you are competing with in Poland? And they said, stability. And I said, are you sure? Are these other cities that you're competing with unstable? And they said, no, that's not what we mean. So what do you mean? No, we're stable because we have had the same mayor for quite some time. So is that really a differentiator? Can you clearly say that because you're stable, because you have the same mayor for the last 20 years or so, does that make you really different from all those locations that I showed you at the beginning with those 200 countries around the world? So the startup mindset is really important because it reframes promotion as product market fit. So you see, you have this is the market. Is that a market fit? And that will give you a lot of clarity. So again, I would say that in the Western Balkans, one thing that could make your value proposition different is agile intelligence. I was talking yesterday about making sure that you can test some of the solutions, including AI, in the Western Balkans, because you have 6 different countries. They're small enough to run tests quickly, but they're also diverse enough to see how different markets respond to that. Make use of that. Why not? What if this is something that could actually draw people's attention and investors' attention to you? So we're looking at the Western Balkans here, and if there is one region that understands disruption, it is the Western Balkans. So acknowledge the political, economic, and cultural volatility, and make sure you are translating that into your adaptability. This is what I was talking about earlier. You have lived through a lot of different transformations. Not once, but actually quite a few times. And this gives you really a muscle that most developed economies do not have. They have forgotten about that. You have that already. Build on that. You have that muscle, make it stronger. So something that I want to sort of finish with. I heard a couple of people talking about the experiences of Poland, for example, and perhaps replicating them in the Western Balkans. I think there's a story that has been, mentioned by a number of different political leaders to replicate this, Silicon Valley somewhere else. Has that ever happened? No. You won't be able to replicate the success of Poland because the circumstances are completely different. You might take some of the experiences and see how to adapt them to the circumstances, but never to replicate that 100%. So make sure that you learn from others, but then you build on the experiences that you have here in the Western Balkans. And maybe one thing that I need to say, that I would perhaps think twice before appointing an AI minister. I know that something like that recently happened. Instead of appointing an AI minister, I would perhaps appoint someone who is responsible for national curiosity, for courage, and for clarity, because these are the things that will help you build a future-ready and future-relevant region. Because technology will not transform the countries. It will help, but it will actually be the people who will be the architects of the future of the region. So make sure that you replace the geography element with the growth mindset that I would like you to strongly to build. And one question, this question is not here, but I'm coming back to the global map. One of the questions that I ask during the reinvention sprints is, what would happen if your country suddenly disappeared from the map? What would investors really, really miss? And I would like you to think about this question, and I'll leave you with that question, and I hope this will uncover some ideas for the future. Thank you very much. If you feel like, oops, oh, okay, that wasn't me already. I wanted to leave the previous slide. Oh no, I won't be able to do that. Okay, so thank you very much for that. Yeah, that was the last one. That was contact details, but I would have to go back to that, right? Okay, no, this is the first. Oh, yes, okay. So if you feel like connecting and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And thank you very much for staying with us, or with me, until the very last moment. Thank you.